Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive straight into the deeply surprising historical and theological connections between Islam and Western history. You know, when we consume modern media, we're often fed this narrative of two entirely separate, clashing worlds. But if you sit down and actually read the historical documents, well, you find a completely different, deeply interconnected picture. It's like a giant puzzle where the pieces actually fit together perfectly. So today, we're exploring those shared roots through the data and the history itself. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's kick this off with a question that might just turn everything you know about the Founding Fathers completely on its head. So, what shaped American religious freedom? When we look at the bedrock of this country, we almost always default to thinking about John Locke, the European Enlightenment, maybe British common law, right? But there's actually a much wider, frankly, much more fascinating lens we need to look through to fully grasp how universal religious freedom was originally conceived here.
Section 1. Jefferson and the Quran. Intellectual roots. Think about the Enlightenment in early America for a second. We rarely, if ever, think of Islamic texts playing a role in that. But picture this. It's 1765. Thomas Jefferson is a young guy, deeply engrossed in studying law, and he actually goes out and purchases a copy of the Quran. He wasn't just hoarding books for the sake of it either. He was actively studying the legal and philosophical frameworks of the entire world. This was Jefferson absorbing a massive array of global thought, way before the United States was even a glimmer of a country. And this is exactly why this matters. Years later, when he was drafting the foundational Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, Jefferson took those inclusive principles and explicitly defended the rights of Muslims, Jews, and Christians alike to hold public office and practice their faith freely. He wasn't just designing freedom for his own specific in-group. He was intentionally building a system broad enough to protect the whole spectrum of beliefs he'd spent his life studying. It was a real game changer. Section 2. The Golden Age. Islamic influence. Now, Jefferson's curiosity didn't just pop up out of nowhere. We have to zoom out a bit. Look at this timeline. While Europe was slogging through what we historically called the Dark Ages, there was this unbelievably vibrant period of intellectual discovery happening elsewhere. Scholars in massive intellectual hubs, places like Baghdad and Cordoba, weren't just keeping human knowledge on life support, they were massively advancing it. And this long, rich tradition of scholarship built this incredible intellectual bridge that eventually led straight to the libraries of Western thinkers, including, of course, Jefferson in 1765. These folks weren't just librarians dusting off old history books. They were actively translating ancient Greek philosophy, which, by the way, literally fueled the European Renaissance later on. But even more than that, they were pioneering modern algebra and developing highly advanced optics. So, to put that into perspective, the math and science we absolutely take for granted in the West today, they have direct, unbroken roots tracing right back to these very scholars during the Islamic Golden Age. Pretty wild, right?
Section 3. Shared beliefs. Abrahamic roots.
So, understanding this massive intellectual bridge naturally leads us to look at the theological roots too. There's this huge, super common myth, mostly fueled by media stereotypes, that Muslims worship a completely different God than Christians or Jews. But get this, the Arabic word Allah literally just translates to the English word God. That's it. And this exact same word is used identically by Arabic-speaking Christians and Jews every single day in their own worship and when reading their own holy texts. It's entirely a linguistic difference, not a theological one at all. The absolute crucial takeaway here is that Islam isn't some entirely foreign, disconnected religion operating in its own universe. It's a direct continuation of the exact same Abrahamic tradition. We are talking about worshiping the same creator and honoring the exact same foundational prophets. Guys like Abraham and Moses. Essentially, we're just looking at different branches growing from the exact same historical tree. Section 4. Jesus and Mary, revered in Islam. Now this shared tradition brings us to what is probably the most misunderstood area of all. A major misconception is that Muslims just don't believe in Jesus. But the data tells a completely different story. Jesus is actually one of the most highly revered prophets in the entirety of Islam. In fact, you might be surprised to hear this, but Jesus is mentioned by name more times in the Quran than the Prophet Muhammad himself. Crazy, right? And that deep reverence absolutely doesn't stop with Jesus. Mary, or Maryam in Arabic, is profoundly honored in the Islamic faith. So much so that she actually holds a totally unique distinction. She is literally the only woman to have an entire chapter named after her in the Quran. That's chapter 19 or Surah Maryam. It's a level of prominence that really hits the nail on the head regarding just how deeply intertwined these faith traditions truly are. Section 5.
modern realities, lived values. Okay, so seeing all these deeply shared historical and theological roots totally reframes how we should look at modern lived realities. It takes us from old ancient texts right into how diverse communities are operating today. A massive myth about religion is that it's purely about private, behind closed doors rituals, but Islam emphasizes this concept called zakat. It's a mandatory charity that the poor pours of the faith. But here's the key. It is fundamentally viewed as a basic right that is owed to the poor by the wealthy. It's not just some optional, simple act. It is a built-in mechanism for social justice and economic balance. When you look at how this actually translates to everyday life, the core message for diverse American Muslims today, whether we're talking about your doctor, a local artist, or a college student, focuses heavily on everyday experiences. The emphasis is on the ongoing pursuit of knowledge, active engagement, and treating all of your neighbors with genuine kindness, absolutely regardless of their background. It's all about those lived community values. And that, honestly, brings us full circle. From the modern charity drives and the diverse professionals working in our cities today, stretching all the way back to Thomas Jefferson poring over his Quran in 1765, this tradition is not some recent foreign import. Not at all. It has always been seamlessly woven into the broader American intellectual and cultural story since the very beginning. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought and a question to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. How does knowing this shared history reshape your view of the world? I mean, when we rely on actual historical data and original texts, instead of just passively absorbing media stereotypes, we find out that our human history is deeply, inextricably connected. I really hope this structured look at our shared roots encourages you to look past the myths and recognize the profound bridges between our cultures. Keep an open mind, keep asking questions, and keep learning.